You are listening to Travel with the Backpacking Housewife podcast. I'm your host, Janice Horton. I'm an ex-housewife, an empty nester, and normally a nomadic world traveller who loves to discuss dreamy destinations all around the world, and in particular, the pros and cons of midlife and senior travel, and about making the most of opportunities to travel in retirement, or what I like to call the golden age of travel. Welcome to episode 19. This week, I'm continuing our adventures in the USA after featuring Miami and the Florida Keys, New Orleans, Las Vegas, Nevada, Route 66, Arizona, and the Grand Canyon South Rim in the past few episodes. In this episode, I want to tell you all about a truly fantastic 2-day trip to San Francisco, California. And I want to share with you our fabulous itinerary, so that if you can manage a weekend or a 2-day break in San Francisco, you can, as we did, waste no time in having fun and amazing experiences. In those 2 days, we explored the streets of San Francisco by foot and also using the famous cable cars. We ate amazing food. We hired bicycles and cycled over the Golden Gate Bridge, and of course we toured and explored the prison on Alcatraz Island. And each of these adventures and iconic experiences were on our travel wish list, or bucket list, and we were so excited to be in the famous city. We'd almost made it to San Francisco a couple of times while we'd been in the USA previously, but somehow it just hadn't worked out. This time, we were on our way over from Asia to the USA, flying from Seoul in South Korea via Beijing, China, to San Francisco, and we planned to take a 2-day pit stop in San Francisco before making our way down to the Caribbean to spend the summer. Interestingly, during that flight over the Pacific Ocean, we experienced time travel, as we crossed the international date line and arrived in San Francisco half an hour before we actually left Seoul in South Korea. How crazy is that? Of course, in real time, we had been travelling for so long that we were exhausted and jet-lagged. But we didn't let that stop us. In those days, we just pushed through with the jet lag and we didn't stress about it. So here's how to spend 2 fun, action-packed days in San Francisco. First up, where to stay. We'd booked a room at the Holiday Inn Express in the Fisherman's Wharf area of downtown San Francisco. And on this occasion, we stayed completely free, using our points collected on our IHG loyalty card. So, a top travel tip would be to collect those hotel and flight loyalty points for upgrades and free stays and flights as soon as you can. We did so from the outset, and now, thanks to IHG, we regularly stay in upgraded rooms and suites with all the perks on just booking a regular room through the IHG app. That's the International Hotels Group. On day 1, we explored the area around Fisherman's Wharf, and we took a leisurely stroll around Pier 39. We watched the clouds roll in across the bay, and we stopped to watch sea lions that have made the place their home and were sleeping on the wooden dock. We had a look at the souvenir stores selling t-shirts and touristy trinkets, and we admired the view of Alcatraz Island and enjoyed what was a beautiful and breezy day. I've heard that San Francisco can be overly crowded at times and that it can be foggy and chilly, with a strong wind at certain times of the year. We were there in mid-April, and it was absolutely perfect time to visit. There are so many songs about San Francisco, and when you're there, it's hard not to bring them to mind, and to quietly hum the tune to San Francisco, be sure to wear flowers in your hair, or Sitting on the Dock of the Bay, or I Left My Heart in San Francisco. Or maybe that's just me. While we were at Pier 39 on Fisherman's Wharf with wonderful views of the bay, we had a classic and delicious clam chowder from a sourdough bread bowl at a restaurant called Chowder's for lunch. For those of you who aren't sure what a clam chowder is, it's a thick and creamy chicken and potato broth soup with clams and that's a kind of shellfish, for which San Francisco is famous. After lunch and exploring the pier, we were keen to explore the streets of San Francisco, especially the steep streets, and to travel up and down them on a cable car. There are 3 cable car routes to choose from, and we chose to take the cable car from Fisherman's Wharf Turnpike all the way to Union Square, where it turns around at the junction of Market and Powell Street and then heads back up the street again. You can ride on the cars by sitting on seats inside or outside. You are also allowed to stand, and lots of people stand whether there are seats available or not, often on the running boards while hanging onto the pole. And this is how you get the best views of the steep streets and the harbour. The cable car system is fascinating and unique. Built in 1873, it's synonymous with the streets of San Francisco, and it's the last working system of its kind in the world. The cable cars are powered by an engine located in a central powerhouse, and they move by gripping an underground cable that's in constant motion. The man operating the cable car is called the grip man, and he is responsible for operating the grip and also ringing the bell. We bought our cable car tickets from the ticket booth at Fisherman's Wharf Turnpike, and our tickets cost $7 each way. As well as riding on the cable cars, you can also visit the Cable Car Museum on the corner of Mason Street and Washington Street. It's free to enter, and you can see historic cable cars and displays of interesting old photographs. And as this is actually the powerhouse of the cable car system, you can watch the huge engines at work as they pull those colossal cables that run the cars in use on the streets. You can see my photos from this trip and the video clips that I took while riding the cable cars down the incredibly steep streets of San Francisco on the corresponding post to this podcast that's on my website at thebackpackinghousewife.com. And the post is entitled San Francisco, Steep Streets, Cable Cars and Clam Chowder. On day 2 in the morning, we were up and about early as we were keen and excited to rent bikes and to cycle over the Golden Gate Bridge, and then to take the afternoon ferry over to visit the Alcatraz Island. Cycling over the Golden Gate Bridge was always a bucket list thing for me to do once we got to San Francisco. And although that might sound like a super energetic and exhausting and even difficult thing to do, it's actually not, even if you haven't been on a bicycle for years. This is because the cycle ride from Fisherman's Wharf will take you on a leisurely route through the aquatic park, Fort Mason, and the marina, and the national park on a mostly flat, car-free paved bike path, all the way to the base of the Golden Gate Bridge. And cycling across the bridge itself is also done on a car-free sidewalk with a barrier there to protect you from traffic, and so you're not on the road itself. You can take your time and ride over the Golden Gate Bridge at your own pace to Sausalito, where you could have lunch before hopping on the ferry with your bike right back to San Francisco. The approximate duration and distance from Fisherman's Wharf is 1.5 hours or 8 miles to Sausalito. We didn't actually do this route because we'd only allocated the morning to experience the cycling over the bridge, as we planned to go over to Alcatraz Island in the early afternoon. So we biked along the bike path, past the beautiful marina and the waterfront area, taking in the views of the bay and the bridge, and of course Alcatraz Island. Then once we reached the bridge, we cycled over it, and then we turned right round and did it all again in reverse. It was a glorious day, and we were lucky because the bridge wasn't at all busy, nor was it misty or too windy, as I've heard it can get pretty foggy and gusty up there on occasions. Don't forget to check out my photos and my video clips on my website at thebackpackinghousewife.com on the corresponding post entitled Biking Over the Golden Gate Bridge. We hired our bikes from a company called Blazing Saddles, and they have various outlets around the Bay Area, and we found them to have a friendly, knowledgeable staff and the perfect bikes for us. They adjusted the seat, gave us some good information, and fitted us with bike helmets too. We mentioned that we booked online, and so we got a 20% discount. I have no hesitation in recommending them. If you are doing the ferry boat return from Sausalito, then Blazing Saddles will also sell you the return ferry ticket as part of your package. Biking over such an iconic and probably the most famous bridge in America was a fabulous pinch-me kind of bucket list experience, and I loved every minute of it. Taking a ferry over to Alcatraz Island and exploring the famous decommissioned prison is on most people's travel agenda when they visit San Francisco. I'm no exception. I was really excited about it, and as soon as we'd booked our flight over to San Francisco, I went online and booked our tickets for Alcatraz. I was really glad that I did. I later found out that had I waited until we were actually in San Francisco to buy our tickets, we would have been disappointed. Gutted, actually, as tickets had all sold out for our dates. So if you're planning to visit Alcatraz as part of a trip to San Francisco, do plan ahead. Tickets are available to purchase for up to 90 days ahead online, so do buy before you go. You'll find the official ticket website link in the transcript to this podcast and also on my website at thebackpackinghousewife.com on the corresponding post entitled Escape from Alcatraz, a 50-year-old mystery solved. The Alcatraz Island tour starts off from Pier 33, also known as Alcatraz Landing. It's just a short walk from Fisherman's Wharf, and we arrived half an hour early before our ferry time, as it says to do so on the ticket, and we joined the queue. It was a pleasant 15-minute ferry ride over to the island, and it was exciting to see the imposing prison getting closer and closer as we stood on the deck snapping photos. You can take your time and stay on Alcatraz Island as long as you like, and then you can take a ferry back whenever it suits you to the mainland. We listened to the visitors' welcome talk, and then we walked up the hill to the prison, stopping to look at the oldest lighthouse on the Californian coastline, and also to take in the poignancy of the Indians' welcome graffiti that's been left by the Native Americans who occupied the island in 1969 to 1971. It was a warm and sunny and calm day when we entered the walls of the prison that had held the most dangerous criminals in America, like Al Scarface Capone, George Machine Gun Kelly, Arthur Doc Barker, and probably the most famous of all, Robert the Birdman Stroud. Burt Lancaster starred in the 1962 movie The Birdman of Alcatraz, about Stroud's life in solitary confinement on Block D, and Stroud was reportedly never allowed to see it. While walking along the cell blocks, as a writer with a vivid imagination, I could easily imagine what it must have been like to have been imprisoned there, especially in the winter time, on cold and dark and stormy nights. It must have been horrible. Inside the prison, the atmosphere is hauntingly oppressive. We were told that when the wind blew towards the island, prisoners could often hear music and parties and people having fun in the city that was so close and yet so far away. It was said to be the worst torture for all the prisoners. From my perspective, looking down from the prison wall to the water of the bay, it looked as though it might be easy to escape simply by swimming away. But the currents in the bay area are said to be treacherous. There have, of course, in the past been many escape attempts. The most fascinating escape attempt, in my opinion, and certainly the most mysterious, was on the night of the 11th of June, 1962, when brothers John and Clarence Anglin and fellow inmate Frank Morris pulled off a prison break so daring that it went on to inspire Hollywood thriller Escape from Alcatraz, starring Clint Eastwood. The men used blades and spoons and a drill over the course of 6 months to gradually dig an exit opening through ventilation ducts in their cells. They fashioned paper mache models of their own heads using plaster and their own hair to make them look lifelike. Then on the night of their daring escape, they used towels and clothing to pad out their beds and conceal their absence. To date, the escape holes that they forged and the model heads are still on display at Alcatraz inside the men's prison cells. I found this story utterly fascinating. Until fairly recently, it was believed that the three men had drowned in the bay on that night in 1962 because they were never seen again. But a letter has since appeared, apparently written by John Anglin, who would now be 86 years old, and that may solve the mystery over what became of the three men. The letter, obtained by CBS San Francisco, was allegedly sent to the city's Richmond police station in 2013 and claims that Clarence Anglin died in 2011 and Morris in 2008. You can read more about this particular letter and about John Anglin and the prisoners who escaped with him from Alcatraz in a news report, to which the link is in the transcript and on my corresponding post on my website, thebackpackinghousewife.com. It was also interesting that while we were on the island, a former inmate, William Bad Boy Baker, now aged 85, who had written a book about his time in Alcatraz prison in the 1950s entitled Alcatraz 1258, was in the gift shop bookshop that day to personally sign copies of his book. His prisoner number had been 1259. Baker, who claims that he learned how to counterfeit checks in Alcatraz and that he learned from the best, is usually on the island every Wednesday through Friday to sign copies of his book, and I'm sure it will be an interesting read. It was great to meet him. He's a real rock star of the rock. After taking the headset tour and listening to all the interesting information and the stories of Alcatraz, and of course having my picture taken through the bars from the inside of one of the tiny cells, we went outside to take a breath of fresh air and to admire the city skyline of San Francisco and the Golden Gate Bridge. Visiting Alcatraz had been all and more than I expected. It was an amazing experience. Have you ever been to San Francisco? Get in touch and let me know. Did you ride the cable cars? And did you try the clam chowder? What's your favourite song about San Francisco? Have you cycled over the Golden Gate Bridge, or do you plan to do it? What other bridge do you want to cross over in your lifetime? So many questions. I'd love to hear from you. You can email me through my contact page on the website at thebackpackinghousewife.com or get in touch through my social media channels. I'm on Facebook as The Backpacking Housewife, and I'm on Instagram as Janice Horton Writer. And if you're on Twitter, please do tweet to let me know about your travel plans for this year or for the new future. I'm at Janice Horton, that's JANICEHORTON. And come and travel with me here on Travel with the Backpacking Housewife podcast. Do subscribe and follow for inspiring and informative new episodes each week, in which I'll be discussing ways to plan for and to prioritise travel and adventure in our lives and in our new future, in what is set to become a new and golden age of travel.